Hey friends, so today I'm trying out sort of a new style for Ask Anima, and after you watch it, I want you to comment below and I want you to let me know if you prefer this sort of looser, more impromptu, less formal style, or you like the older ones where it's a bit more formal, it's a bit more produced. Let me know what you think. Well, one thing that I want to say first is that there's a difference between being humble and being self-deprecating. Being humble does not mean someone gives you a compliment and you say, no, that's not true. No, I am nothing. I could never be anything. Oh, buh, buh, buh. That's not being humble. In fact, that's actually being selfish. Because if you think of somebody as giving you a compliment, they are giving you something. They are literally giving you a gift. Like if you had a favorite type of shoe, if you really loved Air Jordans and a friend of yours bought you some Air Jordans and gave them to you, and you basically said, no, I can't take them. I don't want them. No, I don't even want, no. They would be offended because they want to give you something. And when someone compliments you, they are wanting to give you something. And so to just throw it back in their face and say, no, that's not being humble. That's actually being more selfish than anything else. But to answer the question, finding the balance between humility and celebrating our accomplishments, at least in my life, I found it helps to always keep myself in the middle. And what I mean by that is if I view every area of my life as a journey, whether it's spiritual, whether it's artistic, whether it's as a husband, or whatever it is, I view it as a journey. And on that journey, there are people who are just starting out, and then there are masters of it. And let's take being an actor, for example, because I'm an actor. There are people who have just started acting, and then there are people who have won Academy Awards and Tony Awards and are the best possible actors out there. And when I think of all the people that I surround myself with, I always try and keep myself in the middle. I always try and surround myself with a good amount of people who are just starting out, who aren't as far along in that journey as I am. Because what that does for me is that helps me to look back and see, wow, I've really come a long way. I remember when I was like that. I remember when I was learning that. And that helps me to celebrate that accomplishment. But if I'm only surrounded by people who aren't as far along as I am on the journey, that might cause me to become a little arrogant, thinking that I'm the greatest or I know everything. So I also have a mix of people who are much further along on that journey, masters of people that I surround myself with. And so I try and keep myself in the middle so that I'm always intimately aware of how far I've come, but also how far I need to go. Seeing how far I need to go helps to humble me to say, I've come a long way, but I'm not there yet. And when I say surround yourself, just so we're clear, I don't mean that they have to be your best friends. I mean, you can surround yourself with people who are excellent and who are the best in your field by reading their books or by listening to their podcasts or whatever it might be. You don't have to know them personally in order for them to have an influence on your life and in order for them to help you stay in the middle. I don't know if I necessarily have a life verse. I have different verses that have really helped me out in different seasons of life. I think one of the really amazing things about the scriptures in general is that I can read something in the Bible one year and it makes no sense to me whatsoever, and I go back and I read it a couple years later and it speaks so much truth into my life and it's exactly what I needed to hear. And so there are different verses for different seasons for me, and different verses for different circumstances. I think one of the best reasons why we should be familiarizing ourselves with the scriptures is because when I am having trouble trusting God, I need to have a verse that reminds me of why I need to do that. That's why I lean on like a verse like Proverbs 3, 5 through 6, Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to him and he will make the path straight. Whenever I'm struggling with trust, I usually lean on that. When I'm giving, when I'm tithing, I usually pray around a verse of generosity, Proverbs 11:24, which says, the world of the generous gets larger and larger, but the world of the stingy gets smaller and smaller. When I'm on stage, I pray around Matthew 5:16, which says, therefore let your light shine before others that they may see your good deeds and give glory to your Father in heaven. And so I have verses for different seasons and verses for different circumstances, but one, I guess, that I would call my life verse, just because it encompasses my entire life really, really well, and what I desire out of my life and what I believe God desires out of my life and beyond my life, is Daniel chapter 12, verse 3, which says, those who bring many to righteousness shall shine as the stars forever and ever. Because if you think about a star in our galaxy, but light years away, if that star were to burn out, it would still be visible in the sky. It would still be bringing light to this world thousands and maybe even millions of years after it had burnt out. And so my prayer for my life is that God's influence, his light shining through me, would bring light to this world, would continue to encourage people long after I am gone. So this is a question that I get a lot, and it's one of the reasons that I chose it, obviously, for this episode of Ask Anima. And usually, whenever someone asks me this question of how do I strengthen my relationship with God, I usually respond with a question. And I ask, well, what does your prayer life look like? What does your scripture study look like? And what does your community that you surround yourself with look like? That's sort of the litmus test for me. And where I get that is out of the Bible. In Acts chapter 2, we get a description of the early church. And it describes what they do, and it says that they committed themselves to fellowship, to prayer, to teaching, and to the breaking of bread daily. And if you continue to read through Acts, you see all of the amazing things that God does through that early church. And so what I do in my life is I take that model of the early church, I take those practices, and I try and incorporate them in my day-to-day life. At least once a day, I try and have some form of fellowship. Every day, I try and pray. Every day, I try and commit myself to some form of teaching. And, there's different forms of prayer, and there's different forms of teaching, not just regular, God, please give me this, but worship can be a prayer, just talking with God, listening to God, and teaching, scripture study, obviously, but sermons, the best sermons from the best teachers in the world are available online, literally, right now, for free. And then also to the breaking of bread, sitting down and sharing a meal with somebody. You see Jesus do that just as much as you see him teach, just as much as you see him healing people. You see him sitting and breaking bread with people. And I believe that that's important as well. And so I usually ask people, well, what does that look like in your life? And the response a lot of the time is, well, I pray, but it's hard. Or I try and study the Bible, but it's kind of boring, or it's hard to find time, life is crazy. And really, at the end of the day, it really comes down to how bad do you want it? And it really comes down to how much work and how much time are you willing to put in? And I don't want to confuse it, because I don't want people to hear the term work and then be like, oh no, John, we are not saved by work, we're saved by grace. That's absolutely true. Our salvation is not earned by our work. No, it is a gift of grace. It is not by works that we have been saved. However, it is by our works and our effort and the time we put in that we will strengthen the relationship that God started through his grace. And so if you think of a relationship with your best friend or a relationship with your future spouse, if you don't put in the time to spend time with them one-on-one, if you don't spend time with them in groups of people, if you don't Study that person and learn their likes and their dislikes and what makes them angry and what makes them sad and what makes them happy. If you don't share a meal with them, how would you ever expect to have a strong relationship? You wouldn't. So why is your relationship with God any different? It's not going to be. If you don't put in that time, if you don't put in the work, if you don't invest in that relationship with God, it's going to be weak, no matter what. And I know that's probably not the answer a lot of people hear, because a lot of people want some sort of hack or some sort of quick fix, but it's just not going to happen. Because God, the only quick fix I could think of would be for God to decide that he's going to force everyone to have a great relationship with him. And that's just not the type of God that we worship. That would not be a loving thing to do. He wants us to choose him. He gives us the free will to choose what we do with our time. And he hopes that we will choose him and choose to put him into our schedule because he has already chosen us. Yo, friends, thanks for watching. Once again, please comment below. Let me know what you thought of this more impromptu version of Ask Anima. Also, you can check out some of our other videos right here. In case you need a refresher on what the old Ask Anima looks like, it's right here. So watch some of those and then come back to this video and cast your vote whether you like this more impromptu version or that more structured version. That's all I have for you today. And just because this is less structured does not mean that I'm not going to dance. Peace!